Hi everyone, it's Monique from ButterBeeScraps, and I am here for another tutorial, and I think you guys are really going to like this one. Last week the card caddy went off really well, and honestly I haven't crafted like that in a long time, so I wanted to do some more of it. So what I'm going to be doing is a mini album series. Yay! And I'll show you my process, or the creative process I go through in putting together a mini album. I never know what my project is going to look like when I'm done. I might pick a paper line and a bunch of embellishments that go with it, but that's about as far as it goes. So this will be kind of interesting for you because you're going to see this project unfold with me. So I don't have a completed project to show you right now, but I think it'll be fun week to week seeing the changes. So the first step I do to make any mini album is I make the pages and adhere them to my binding. So let me move this sign out of the way and I'll show you exactly how much we're going to get done today. This is what I ended up with. So you can see I've got my binding here. It's not attached to anything. And I have 6 pages here. I chose to use 6x9" envelopes because I have a ton of them. And I made 2 different style of pages. I have no idea if anybody else has come up with this style. Probably. If so, it's just absolute fluke. So unfortunately, I can't give credit. Let me just show you the first page. So the first page uses 3 envelopes, and you have this kind of stacked pocket. I put this folding mat in the shortest pocket, and I have what I call a full-size mat in the second pocket, and then of course there's a third mat in the end of this page here. Now when you flip the page over, now this is going to be tricky because I am videoing in a pretty small spot. So flip the page over and you have another picture mat in the end of the page there. And then this flips up to give you a double spread. The next page here, I've got a flap and then a pocket where I put a full-size mat. You can add extra tags or whatever you want in there. When you flip this page over, you have another full-size mat in the end of the page here. You have a large mat in this pocket, and then you can flip this up and you have another mat in this pocket. So those are the 2 pages, and I just alternate one then the other, then the other. The binding system that I used is Kathy Orta's Hidden Hinge binding system. However, it's got a twist. It looks exactly like her binding system right now, but when we go and put the book together, you will see it is not, because we are not going to be gluing the back of this to a solid spine. It's going to be allowed to flex freely. And no, it will not break over time. We're reinforcing it, and I'll show you my tricks to doing that. And the nice thing about that style of binding method is it's kind of like a real book. And if you look, if you open up to the center of a real book, when the pages lay flat, the binding is kind of arched up like this. So that's what this one's going to end up like. So anyway, let me move this out of the way, and I'll show you how I put it together. See you shortly. Okay, so we're going to start with the binding of this album. So I am using 6" by 9" envelopes. So I've made, and I'm using 6 pages. So I've made my paper 6 inches tall by 11 inches wide. I've allowed 3/4 of an inch on either end to adhere the binding to the mini album. I just wanted a little bit extra there. So all we have to do is start scoring at 3/4 of an inch. and then every 1/2 inch after. And of course your last score mark should appear at 10 1/4 inches here, leaving 3/4 of an inch for the other cover. Now, I didn't score this 100% correct because to get a nice strong joint where you score, you really should score and then fold back. And we're going to be kind of accordion folding this, but it's okay. We're reinforcing the binding, plus you know, the pages are going to be adhered to it, so it'll be totally fine. What I am going to do, however, is where the album attaches to, or where the binding attaches to the cover, I am going to make sure these score lines are folded in the correct direction. So I scored on the top, and I'm going to fold this back. And of course this end will also end up, sorry, I've got glue here coming off my fingers. So that's going to be attached to your covers. So the next space is then a 1/2 inch space to allow for embellishments and stuff like that. So you're going to fold this up again, and then we're going to flip it over and go back, and then we're going to go up. So you can see that's the first page. Now there's another gap, so we have to go up again. I'll flip it over to do the gusset for the next page and up. So now you should have folds for 2 pages, and we just keep doing that all the way to the end. So it's up, down, down, right? So I'm going to speed up the film here so you can watch. Hopefully you can keep track of what I'm doing here. And there we go, we're all done. Now near the end I'm usually tempted to rotate my binding by 180 degrees, but I have learned not to do that because then I just mess up my scoring order. So this is what you should end up with. Let me flip it up like this. Hopefully you can see that. So there should be, you know, 6 peaks in here for your pages, and then the 2 end flaps to adhere to your covers. I don't know why I can't talk today, guys. Sorry about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over, and I'm actually going to glue these peaks together. And I've just got a little bottle here. I've put Fabri-Tac glue in it. I like to use glue on my binding because it's a lot stronger than score tapes, and it dries, right? Score tape will remain kind of sticky, and the paper can pull apart. So I don't like that.
We express the same things, but with different words. We acknowledge the same curve, and those might have hurt. It's like the last line you draw to remind a past time, a fast mighty feeling of freedom.
Okay, now I know I made a bit of a mess. You can see the glue seeping out the ends and stuff like that. But you know what the nice thing about Fabri-Tac is? Fabri-Tac is you can wipe it off the paper without it leaving a bunch of residue, which is really quite cool. Sometimes white glue, you'll see a dark spot, and these, where the paper or where the pages are attaching, I'm not too worried about it. So that's what you should have now. And what we're going to do now is, so that we can attach our pages and allow this to flex and not worry about these gussets here coming apart, I take a piece of muslin, or you can actually use, you know, these flour sack towels or anything really. You just want a thin fabric, and I glue it right over the back side. And actually I'm going to do 2 layers. So I'm not worried about how big I'm cutting this. I'm going to trim it off after. So I just want a piece that's big enough to glue on there. And really, I should probably refill my glue bottle here. This is a smaller bottle than it obviously comes in. It's just easy to squeeze, and anyway, it doesn't take up a bunch of room on my desk. So that's one piece. Like I said, I'm going to do 2 layers, so I'm going to cut a second chunk that we can glue on top here. And I think rather than using fabric tack for this next part, I'm going to grab a brush, and I've got some glue and seal. This one is a matte finish. Doesn't really matter which finish you choose. And I'm just basically going to cover. You can also use Mod Podge or whatever. I just want complete coverage. I don't want any glue lines or anything.
You'll be recognized, and I can hear your doctors calling from here to say.
And I'm going to grab this first piece of fabric, just starting in the center. And I should have gone up a little bit more, you can see there, but not a big deal. Just missing just a slight corner there. So, just going to use my foam folder here. Oops. And it looks like it's not quite stuck down on the corner here, so that's my first layer of fabric. I'm going to go ahead, brush some more glue on, and put a second layer on right away. You can see with this second layer, the glue really saturates the cloth a little bit, and you can really push it down onto the binding really well.
So
I'm actually just gonna take my time adding this second layer of glue, realizing that the stuff over here might be a little dry by the time I get to the end here, because I really want this glue to saturate the fabric. But that's okay, because I can just go over it again quickly.
Cause he armed himself with stealthy mass appeal. Where's my muse? Where's my muse? If it's like every word slipping through my mouth has been used. Stack me like the old man feeding a third. With my glass I reflecting half the...
Okay, I think that's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, this is pretty wet. I'm going to take the binding and just set it aside to dry. You don't want to mess with it. You want to make sure it just sticks really well all over the place. You get really good coverage. Now before I set this aside, I just wanted to make one more point, is you're going to want to let this sit and dry for maybe 15 or 20 minutes. And once it's done that, make sure you bend these edges up, because you want to make sure that the cloth is not too tight on these corners here where your binding meets your cover page. So I'm just gonna go get this out of my way, pause the movie, and go clean the glue out of my paintbrush, because I really don't want to wreck my brush. And I will be back and we'll start on the pages. Okay, I am back. I've got my binding in a safe place. Wipe my surface here, clean my paintbrush. I even put more glue in my glue bottle. So we should be good to go. We're going to go over this first page style, which looks like this. You need 3 envelopes for the first page, so you're going to have a pocket here, and a pocket here, a pocket here, and then you flip it over, you got a pocket here, here, and then you've got this large, okay? So you need 3 envelopes, and the first thing I do is I take 2 of them and I fold the flap back on itself. So basically what we are going to do is put these together like this, okay? So I'm going to take this flap and stick it in this pocket and glue it down like that, okay? And then this will glue down like that, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So again, we got our 2 pages, flaps folded backwards, turning one 180 degrees, and I hope you can see all of this, as of course we're limited for space. And the first thing I'm going to do, straighten this one out, glue on this flap, stick it in to the pocket here, and press it down. Okay, so I like to use glue when constructing my pages for the same reason I use it on my binding. So here, I'm going to move this out of the way. So I'm going to put some glue all on this flap, and with fabric tack, it's kind of stringy and it dries really quick. So I find I have to act fast or it doesn't work. And I'm kind of at an awkward angle here, so it's kind of hard. So I just fold this one up, push it in right to the edge of the fold, press down, and we should be good to go. But I also put my hand inside this pocket here just to make sure that I'm not going to be gluing the pocket closed, that there's no glue pulling, squeezing out from behind that flap. So that went a lot smoother than I thought it might. So now we're just going to glue this sucker down like that. So let's put some more glue. I try to get it as close to the edges as I can. Stick her down. And if you get glue coming out of the edges, it doesn't matter, because we're going to be putting wallpaper on all these edges. I don't try to make a mess, but anyways. So that's the first part of pages 1, 3, and 5. So for the second part, we're going to make these pockets here, which will be going right on top of here. And actually, when we go to putting this page on the binding, that's the binding's the gusset is going to go right in between there. So okay, so for this, you need to get your paper trimmer out. And I hope, yeah, okay, good, we're good. I just trim the flap off. I turn it around. I trim just a smidge off the end here. Get this out of the way. Now we have to bring our scoreboard in. And I'm going to want to fold it up like this, so I'm going to score on the back side. And I'm going to score at 6 inches here. And I'm going to bend this over, and because it's an envelope and there's a couple of layers, I always line up the edges before I burnish it down. And then all we have to do is glue between the 2 flaps here. Or I guess glue the front pocket down. Okay, so that's all you need to do for pages 1, 3, and 5. So you may want to pause the video here and do 2 more pages like this. And when you're ready to work on the second style of page, come on back, press play, and I'll show you how to do that one. For the next page, you're going to need 2 envelopes. This here is a 6-inch by 9-inch. Actually, it's 8 and 15/16. I intentionally cut it just a 1/16 of an inch shorter so that it wouldn't bind, you know, kind of in the binding, so that there would be just a little bit of play there. And this one here, I did, I want to say 6 by 6, but again, I trimmed it a 1/16 of an inch shorter on each side, so it's actually 5 and 15/16 square. And I just lucked out. I found some paper that was very close to the color of the envelope, so I opted to use that just so that all my edges were correct. Okay, so what we're going to do is, with the base of the page, the flap is going to fold backwards again. So this is going to be the right hand side of the page. And for the pocket, what I'm going to do is, this again is going to, actually this flap is okay the way it is. I am going to score this. Let me get this scoreboard in here. 6 inches from this flapped end. I'm going to score it there. And then what I'm going to do is, to cut the angle on that front pocket, I'm actually going to pull out this little guy, line it up here, keep this with the flap up, and I'm just going to line it up here, and I'm going to score at 1 5/8. And this, I'm not going to fold anywhere there actually. I am honestly just using that as a guide for cut line. So I'm going to put this back. And I'm going to bring my paper cutter in. Destroying the place here. And the first thing I'm going to do is cut this 45-degree angle off. And basically what I'm doing is I'm putting the wire of my cutter right on top of the score line and cutting that corner off. Sorry, I took the cutter out too quickly. You also have to cut just a really, really thin strip off the end of the envelope here. I'll worry about that later. And last but not least, grab your X-Acto knife and very carefully cut down the fold here just to this score line. Now we can fold this up, and again I line up these edges, burnish that fold, and then what we're going to do is take our second envelope with the flap folded backwards, and we're actually going to glue this onto the edge of the paper there. So what I like to do is kind of line it up nice and tight in the fold there. Actually, you're going to want to do that again once you've got the glue on the page. So I'm going to put glue on this whole section. fold it up and adhere that down. I'm now going to take this 6" by 8 15/16 piece of paper, and I'm going to glue it in here. And of course some cutters are a little off square, so here you have an opportunity to just shift it a little, just to make sure that this edge is nice and straight. It'll just give it a nicer finish, because people are not going to notice in here if it's off by, you know, thousandths of an inch. So now just add glue all to this flap and glue her down. I also like to open this up and see how a little bit of glue seeped through. With the fabric tack, you can just wipe it off with your finger and you're good to go. So I'm now going to flip this over. We're going to leave this open for now. It will eventually be adhered down just along 2 edges, but anyway, I'm going to leave that there. And I'm going to take this 5 15/16 square piece of paper and I'm going to glue it in here. So again, just doing the same thing that I did before on the and if glue seeps out, again, don't worry, because you're going to be putting wallpaper on these pages. I don't know where I got that term from. I heard somebody else call it wallpaper, and I thought it was a great term, because that's essentially what it is. Again, open this up, make sure you don't have any glue seeping through. And that's your pages 2, 4, and 6. So if you want to pause the video, go make sure you have 3 of this style page, 3 of the first style of page that we have. Come back. Also make sure that your binding is nice and dry, the glue on that binding is dry, and then what we can do is put the pages on the binding. So see you in a bit. Okay, now it's time to glue the pages onto our binding. You will notice that I've distressed all the edges here. If you want to make it easier on yourself, I would suggest you distress the edges before you actually glue the pages together. That will make it easier for you. I honestly didn't think of it in time, so what I used for distressing the edges was these little Prima inks. I first used this dark bark, and honestly I didn't like the brown with the gold. So once I finished that, I went over it again with this black coal. Looks kind of messy right now, but once you get the wallpaper on, I'm sure it's going to look fine. So before we start putting the pages on, I'm going to put this aside, and this is not quite dry. Probably should wait for it to completely dry, but you know, it'll survive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off all this excess fabric around the edges, and I'm just going to use a pair of scissors.
A windowless frame in a transparent room, filling up cracks with plastic assumes.
Okay, now that I'm done with that, you can choose to just leave it like this or color the fabric, which I'm going to do because I'm using a black binding. And I'm just going to use this Prima ink, chalk ink, yeah, whatever. Anyways, I'm making sure to get the edges. And then I'm just going to flip it over and go right over the whole thing.
Don't stop dreaming, 'cause this ain't over. Wreck up your life until you get sober. Don't stop
Okay, I think that is good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect, excuse me. Because there's going to be the binding of your mini album that's going to go over top of this on the outside of your spine. So, alrighty. So this is what you should have now. I'm going to actually start gluing from the back. So you should have your pages. This one here is your first one. Then you got this one here is your second one, all the way to the end. So the last page, of course, is going to be the same as your second one. It's this guy here. So basically what we want on the back side here is we want to have a pocket here and then a pocket here. So we're going to want to glue around these two edges to stick that on there. So what I am going to do to start, I'm going to flip all these this way. And I always like trying to line it up first. Sorry guys, I just lost a light. There we go. Okay. And of course, because that ink is still wet, my hands are going to be a mess when I'm done here, but c'est la vie, right? Okay. Again, I am using glue, not score tape for this, for a couple of reasons. One, it's just, it'll last long, your album will last longer, for one. And when you're putting stuff in the pocket, the last thing you want is for like your tags and stuff to stick to any binding or edges in the pocket. Now if you use score tape, it stays kind of tacky forever, whereas this stuff dries and there'll be no tack whatsoever to it. Okay, so I'm just going to, I want glue on this entire strip here, just to make sure it's good and stuck down. And then I'm going to add glue along this, just a strip around this edge. And you see that string I got across the page here? No bueno, get rid of it. You don't want your pocket to stick together. Oh my, I feel like a bit of a klutz today. Okay, so you just flip this up. Stick it down. And while the glue is still a little bit tacky, I just want to push it down, make sure it's nice and close. Again, this is why I like using fabric tack, because you saw there was a little bit seeping out. I just run my rag along there and it comes right off. Okay, so that should be your back page attached. And again, there's more glue here, so let's get rid of that. There we go. So the next page, of course, has these two pockets, well, three pockets on the front, I guess, and on the back side, this is going to flip over. So what I suggest you do, and I've already done this, is I'll fold this in half and I'll look for the longer side, this one being the longer side. And I mean, the difference is so minimal, but it will help to glue the longer piece to the back side of this gusset, because then it'll give this one a little bit more room to, like, it won't bind along the binding as much, if that makes any sense. Again, I feel like I cannot speak today. I'm actually going to open this up. So I'm going to line this sucker up. And my glue bottle is making a mess everywhere. I have no idea why it's turning all white in there. I've never seen that before. And we have major boogers. I'm just going to pause and clean this up. Okay, I'm back. So I have to line this up again. And I hope I'm centered there. Like, I can't look from straight above because the camera's there. So what I'm going to do is cover this binding strip completely with glue. Flip that sucker over. And because I'm just destined to make a mess with glue today, I get more in there. Oh, I'm so glad I'm using fabric tack. Sorry guys, I'm working in a really small space here. I'm actually trying to use my photo studio so the lighting's a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so now with this guy, we're just going to glue it right over top. So add glue to the entire surface here. Don't want that to squeeze out. Now actually what I'm going to do is line it up like I did before, right in the crease, and then I'm going to just kind of move it up or down to match the edges of the pages. I didn't want to glue it too far in or I wouldn't be able to open this all the way. So it's looking good now. So there's your second page. So now I'm just going to go ahead and alternate gluing the other 4 pages down. I'll just speed up the film so you can watch what I'm doing.
Don't stop dreaming 'cause this ain't over, my friend. I've risen myself as I walk along the weary, moldy watching. I found myself staring, building up an empire of my great desire. Well, the fumes from my thought process takes me higher, higher and higher. Ain't stopping there. My avalanche of color starts over there, and I've got the solitary key to go through. Ray and delicious, but traps can be so vicious. Prepare for the ultimate takedown. Part-time experience might save you from deliverance, but will it serve the greater cause? afraid. Don't stop dreaming, cause this ain't over. Break up your life until you get sober. Don't stop dreaming, cause this ain't over.
Alrighty, I think I'm done now. So this is your first page. Flip it open. And it just goes like that throughout the whole mini album. Now, I always do my covers last, so we're not going to go over that today. However, something else that you can do before next week is make some tags to tuck in all of the pockets. In this pocket, I actually opted to put in a picture mat that folds in half, so like a little booklet. So you will need 3 of those. I made them 5.5 by 8.5 inches, and then I scored them in half. So their final size was 5.5 by 4.25. So that's there. There's a whole bunch of mats you need that are 5.5 by 8 inches. You will need 15 of those, and then you will need 3 that are 5.25 by 8 inches, and 3 that are 5.5 by 5.75. So cut all those mats, come back, and I'll show you where they go. Okay, so I am back, and I have cut all of my mats and put them in the mini album, and I will show you exactly where they go. You can see that I rounded all of the corners. I do like to use a rather round corner because these are pulled in and out of pockets so much. If you leave the corners square, they're going to look dog-eared and they're going to look ugly in very short order. So I actually used my crocodile here, and I used the scallop. That's the one I like for using, or to use for my mats. So this one here is the 5.5 by 8.5, scored in half, and you can opt to put that right in the pocket like that, or have the flap stick out. I like having the flap stick out, just adds a little bit more interest. This here is the full size. By full size, it's 5.5 by 8. So I'm going to use that term throughout the whole mini album because that's the most number of tags are that size. So here's a full size. You got a full size in the end there. Then when you flip the page, you got a full size in there. On the next page, you open this, and I've just tucked a full size in there. And actually, I am going to do the same thing to these corners as what I did to the photo mats. So I'm just going to chomp them because otherwise I think they are going to make a mess. And I will just go over with ink again and distress the pages, just so that you don't see, some blank edges there. Anyway, so you got a full size one in there. You've got a full size. Here, let me flip the page and I'll scooch it over. You have a full size in the end here. This one here is a little bit smaller. This is the 5.25 by 8 inch. I was originally going to make it 5.5 inches, but because of this little strip that we glued here to make the pocket, it was just too tight. So I like to have a little bit of room for movement there. So I made that one a little bit smaller. And then this pocket has the 5.5 inch wide by 5.75 inch tall mat. So I stuck that in there, and I just copied that throughout the entire album. And I think one other thing I'm going to do, in addition to clipping the edges of these flaps, is I'm actually going to punch a notch here just to make it easier to pull this mat out of the pocket. I'm not going to worry about it for the ends because I like putting tabs onto my photo mats there, so they'll be easy to pull out. But definitely on this pocket, I'm going to add a notch in there. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly show you how I make the notch. I did go over it in my tutorial last week, but sometimes it's nice to see an actual video of how somebody does it rather than just photos. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you on this back page how to do the notch. And I'm going to flip my album upside down just because it's easier. And this honestly would be easier if you could do it before you glue your pages down. But I mean, I'm showing you my process, which isn't always organized and straightforward. As I go, I find ways of tweaking and improving the design. So basically what I want to do is I'm just going to mark a center line down here, down this envelope, and I'm using pencil so that it's easy to erase. And just drawing a very faint line there. And I've opted to use a 1.5 inch circle punch for this. So what you want to do is slide the skinny part into your pocket, and these notches or these marks on the side you want to line up with the edges of the paper, and this mark right here you want to match up with the center line you made. There we go. That easy. And then all I do is erase this pencil line. So when we get to wallpapering, I'll show you how to get a nice round curve with a nice even spacing all around that. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you're as excited as me to be doing a mini album. It's been such a long time since I've done the mini album. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to finishing this series. Chat at you later. Bye-bye.